Okay, so yes, the first item on the agenda is replacement shutters for the Sears house at 3421 21st Ave. They have had louvered shutters. So this is louvered shutters when the applicant purchased the property. This is all visible around it. This is the original Sears image, so you can see it did have shutters and they were louvered, and the applicant is requesting raised panel. There we go. Is Mr. Uckert or RJ or Matt on the line? Well, it's fairly straightforward. They also give these raised panel shutters on the windows that have historically had shutters.
Are they going to be the 2-panel or the 3-panel?
They're going to be the 2-panel.
Okay. Well, I mean, does anybody have a problem with this? I don't. I mean, even though the original did have, louvered shutters, the Sears houses, you often had options for various things, and it could have been, delivered either way. I don't have a particular problem with this.
I think louvered shutters are probably traditional at that time. I think panel shutters occurred somewhat later. And certainly perhaps more decorative. I'm wondering why the applicant doesn't want to use shutters.
Well, so they need to get replacement shutters because these are not real. So those are faux shutters that are bolted. Oh, yeah. So I think it's because the louvered shutters are generally used when you want airflow, but because we generally use air conditioning now, it now increases the amount of sunlight that comes through without giving you the ventilation. So the flat panel allows him to get darkness.
It's going to be essentially fake shutters.
No, they are operable. Solid wood operable, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a major problem, but I really think it is somewhat of a character-defining issue. For that time, that original time, Sears, they did serve several functions. One was to reduce light shutters actually, louvers are actually movable, just essentially nothing. I have a historic house in the historic district. It's just my.
Serena, one second. The sound keeps cutting in and out.
Yes, I think that's actually your microphone because it's reverberating through here. Just because we had to remove the sound interference because the last recording was cutting out when people were quiet. So we are trying the meeting today without the sound interference software. So I think try muting yourself and see if that helps with our sound. How do I
do that now that they've changed this thing here? Hold on.
So there should still be an icon on the list. Perfect. Okay. Now we'll see Amari.
Yeah. I guess I wouldn't have I feel sort of the same way that Robert feels, but but it is sort of funny that we're sort of changing sort of how the house was originally presented. And I mean, in theory, I suppose they could get optical wood louvered shutters if they desired to, correct? I presume. So.
Yeah, I presume so.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see Andy's point. I don't have a problem with it as far as looks goes, but I do kind of see during that house seemed to have louvered shutters the entire time. So I mean,
Would it be considered though like a changeable, movable part that changes with fashion? Like we don't review light fixtures, we don't review storm windows because we think that those things, light fixtures in particular, can be changed out.
And I think shutters are a major part of houses and a significant feature of houses. Most old houses had shutters for very good reasons. Both protection of window in case of storms, but also good louvers. You could adjust the light coming in, essentially stop direct light. I don't particularly care for both shutters, but that's cheaper thing. There are shutters available. I spent a lot of time in North Carolina fixing old shutters, and I have actually replaced some with replica shutters because they were so far down. That's just.
I guess I'm sort of torn. I mean, I would sort of, as I would recommend that maybe we put on the discussion potentially. I mean, because I suppose that, I mean, even if, no matter which way I think that we go, I think that there's an argument to be had for it. So, I mean, I would I'd sort of say put on discussion.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents. Robert?
You have to unmute yourself now. There. Oh, no, you just remuted.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, Omari. If it's, I mean, I think Andy makes good points. And, maybe Serena, you can reach out to them and see whether they'd be willing to do louvered shutters.
I don't think so. I mean, we've discussed it, and they wouldn't have come, if they were doing louvered shutters, they wouldn't have to come through the review process. So they're not interested. That's why they're coming to
Well, then put it on, then just, what Omari said.
Okay. All right. Discussion agenda it is. The second item is a roof replacement for Barcroft Community Hall. So they would like to go from the 3-tab shingle roof to architectural shingle. You don't see this very often because in Maywood, we have put it on the ACOA list of things that staff can approve because it's a fairly standard approval. However, Barcroft was designated before we typically created design guidelines, and therefore they don't have design guidelines and have to come forward for this change. I believe some representatives for the project are on the line.
Yes, this is Jennifer Liss, and also I think Randy Swart is on.
Great, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, we're ready to replace the roof pretty soon, and all the roofers we're getting estimates from have recommended that we switch to the architectural shingles for better wind resistance, and so we're looking to have that approved.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Can I make a comment? I think there's architectural shingles certainly looking better, perhaps. They look more like with some thickness. They make shingles appear much more golden, and that's all good. They are rather modern roofing material.
I'm sorry, we're having a hard time understanding what you're saying.
No,
I am.
If Serena could repeat it, it might be a good idea.
Architectural shingles, architectural roof shingles were not available historically, certainly for the time of this church. I agree with you and with Roofer that they're more weather resistant, and they probably make the roof look more like the roofs that had cedar shingles or something like that, we have a little more depth to it. But we are going to change the character, not greatly, but they are going to change the character of the church. And the former church.
Serena, could you please summarize that? Because the sound is so muffled that we can't really understand what other people are saying except you.
Oh, apologies. So Mr. Winchell was just saying that he thinks that the shingle that you have selected is more representative of, say, a cedar shingle, but also realizes that the three-dimensional nature of the architectural shingle will add some change to the way that the building is perceived from the right-of-way. So Mr. Amari, Mr. Amari, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I would agree with Andy's take on it, but I think that said though, I think I'd be more inclined to sort of approve this proposal as I presented. I mean, I think that Andy's correct, but I also think that this is maybe more. I think in this case, I think the more modern material probably makes sense for the roof. But so that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
This is Robert. This is one of those conundrums because Andy's absolutely right that this product was these architectural shingles were not available back then, and so there's a thinner look to the roof. It's more like a sheet than a texture. But although we don't review color, I think we can say something about whether, like for instance, if you look at the difference between the birchwood and the fox hollow gray, they're basically the same color, except one of them has the shading that emphasizes the shadow line, and the other one is more flat, kind of like the white. It's just a flat, and I would think, that if you do a color that does not have the shadow line, that it's sort of a compromise between the two, because the other advantage of the architectural shingles is I think you can generally get a better warranty, a longer warranty. It's generally a longer service roof, which I'm sure is something that is of concern. So I would be okay with this as long as we're picking something that doesn't have the shadow line. I don't know, Andy, what do you think about that?
I think that's a good compromise. I think that the bold shadow lines in the extra really just makes the roof pop. And to eliminate that and just have those basic shadows, yes, when the sun is not enhanced by any additional colors, will make the roof not appear quite so aggressively.
So to the applicants, did you have a color that you had selected?
Well, we haven't yet entered into a contract with the roofer, but because it's a green roof now, we were thinking of a hunter green.
Yeah, that one has a very heavy shadow line.
What I don't know personally is whether the shadow, I mean, these are, samples on a piece of paper. I don't know if it has in reality a shadow line or not.
It does, because the way that they make it, they actually, you can see at the top half of the shingles that recede is actually a darker color. They actually shade the shingle. You can see it really well in the hickory that's right next to it, where they literally change the color as it goes up. Whereas if you look at something like white or fox hollow gray, they don't do that. And so I'm just thinking, unfortunately, the green ones don't, the green has that, I don't know why they did it with a heavy shadow line for the hunter green, because that's nothing, there's no historical, I mean, there's no shingles that were tended to be green that color. I mean, that was usually an asphalt shingle thing, which usually were much flatter. So I don't know, but so it's green now.
Yes.
Yes, I think that,
It's green now. And I was going to ask, is there anything in the Maywood guidelines that talks about shadow lines or anything like that?
Not in the Maywood design guidelines about shadow lines, but they are, those design guidelines were developed for multi-property district where there were many, many replacements of roofs, and roofs are not character defining to the entire neighborhood as a whole.
I understand that, but I thought maybe that HALRB would have spent quite a bit of time developing those guidelines.
They did.
But they are specific.
And I think we would be happy with whatever was chosen for Maywood.
We analyze historic properties case by case, and because this is a single structure, we have to analyze it and the way it impacts people from the right of way differently than we should for residences, in particular because we're talking about residences, some of which had tin roofs and some of which had shingle, asphalt shingle, cedar shake.
Yeah,
so we had to come up with one design guideline for 250.
My only reason for raising that is that our building was built in 1908. It had cedar shakes rather, for the original roof. So it had a texture, but somewhere along the way, the green shingle became part of the identification of the building. For those of us who've been around for only 50 years or so, it seems like green is what we would expect to keep putting on there. If we have to do something completely different, we will.
Well, can I ask a question?
That means a huge change. Yes.
Well, let me ask a question, because we've only looked at one manufacturer. There's a lot of manufacturers. This is GAF. There's a lot of different manufacturers. If there was one that didn't, that was green, that didn't have the shading, would you be okay with that? We're not opposed to the green, and we don't regulate color anyway, so we can't stop you if you want it to be green. But we can say something about the shading, but it's interesting that you say that the original roof was cedar shingles, because that would indicate that texture was there at the beginning. So that's something to think about. It just seems weird to have although I think they sometimes did paint shingles green. I've seen that. It's not common, but so I don't know what does everybody else think about this.
I mean, I think it's a good idea. I know we don't, like I said, we don't regulate the color, but that said, I mean, there are additional manufacturers that may make a green shingle without the shadow line. I think that would satisfy a lot of what we're discussing here. So I think that's probably worth a look. I mean, and again, it's a shadow line, not the color that we're commenting on actually. So I think that's a fair path forward.
I want you to pull up. So this is the oldest image I could get of the hole with the sheet. Or the cedar sheet.
And if I can, the other thing is that even if you do an architectural shingle, it still has a shadow line. I mean, it's from the sun, I think, a natural shadow line. So there will be texture to it. So can we look into whether there is a manufacturer that that offers the green without the, without the added shadow.
We can certainly do that, but it does probably mean that we would have to change from our the contractor that we wanted to use because
they only do GAF?
He uses GAF, yeah. And they're good shingles, but the competitors are good shingles too. If we have to, we can go looking for something else.
Is that just because he typically uses GAF? Does he never use anybody else's shingles? Because I mean, if you're bidding a job, usually you have to bid whatever's been specified.
He is a GAF certified installer.
Okay.
So I think he can use Certainteed or any of the others, but he may not be. We may not qualify for as long a warranty,
right?
If he installs somebody else's shingles, and right. I think we get an extension of the warranty if he installs GAF because he is GAF certified.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Randy, it was quite a significant difference in the warranty with using this shingle. And he is also, I think, as Randy said, he's really we haven't signed a contract yet. I think he is our preferred contractor, just price-wise as well, which is a factor for us.
Okay.
What I don't know in looking at, I mean, again, it's hard to tell from the paper here. We could ask for samples, but visually the slate is a greenish tinge on here, the one in the lower, kind of the lower left. It may actually appear gray, when you actually get a sample, but we could ask him for samples.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it's just the photo. I mean, just from the name. Because I had that same thought, but then I think that's just a darker, I don't know. It might be worth asking because if it has a real greenish tint to it, because there's the oyster gray and the pewter gray are definitely different. They're definitely gray. The charcoal is definitely gray. So I don't know. It might be worth at least asking the question. I mean, of him. So how do we resolve this then? What do the DRC members feel like here?
So it sounds like people don't object to the idea of architectural shingles. There is some concern that the color choice might make it more or less apparent. So we could ask for changes before next week, or we could send it to the HLRB as is.
Let's not use the word color. That's not talking about shadows. And the shadow lines, the natural shadow line, because of the thickness of the architectural shingles, is fine. And make it look more like the original cedar shingles. But those enhanced, they're just really close. You look at the roof is incredibly busy. I think it detracts from the building.
Yeah, I mean, it probably be maybe best if we maybe look at the thing, I guess, before. I mean, the best. I mean, ideally, I suppose, in the ideal situation is that the slate is green and it has no sort of enhanced shadowing. So if we could get a sample of that maybe before.
Or photos of it installed
in right?
Realistic light.
Right,
so
right. I mean, in theory, if that if that was the case, then that would probably everybody accepted that.
So, Ms. Les, do you think that you could get? Oh, sorry. Yes, Robert.
I was going to say, if we could get a sample of the hunter green, it may be that when you see it in person, it's not as extreme as it looks in the photographs. These photographs are often very misleading. And we, you know, I'd see it in person and say, oh, that's fine. So it might be worth to see the hunter green in, you know, in a sample.
Okay, so I will follow up with you, Ms. Liz, about getting that information. So it sounds like we want them on the discussion agenda, correct?
Yeah, I think
Okay, so I will email you about getting that additional information and talk to you about how to get either the samples or images of them installed so that it's easier for everyone to see what the different colors are, or not the colors, how visibly one can see the shadow lines from one type to another, and then we can propose those at the HRB meeting. So you have 1 week to get those to me, and I'll follow up with an email. Does that sound all right?
Serena, if you can please outline that in an email, because we were unable to follow the rest of the discussion except for Mr. Dudka.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 3. So this is a request to change siding and also replace windows in kind and get replacement doors after a fire. So this house, 3605 22nd Street, 21st Street, sorry, suffered an electrical fire, and there was some damage. As you can see, there was fire damage, and the windows were boarded up. It has been closed for a while, and it is owned by the Bethards, and it is being managed by a contractor. He has thus far removed all of the siding, and
Except for the siding.
except for, yes, the fish scale up here has been retained. And so these are older photos from during the work. But as you can see, this is some of more of the fire damage and then this is they're applying to replace it with Bardi plank. They would want to do they would lap it to 4 inches, which is the smallest lap they can get. And then they also submitted images of the windows, which will be in-kind wooden windows. And I didn't attach it yet, but we do have photographs of those in situ because it's going to be a retroactive COA for the way they've already been installed. And then these are replacement doors. We don't have an image of the replacement door for the front because I don't have those materials, but I think Mr. James is on the line and he can walk us through. Mr. Jones, sorry, I know it's John James or James John. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, so do you want to walk us through the project?
Yeah, so basically there was a fire there and we are replacing the siding and we want to put hardy there. I left in the gable, it has the little circle things. We left the gable because I cannot buy that material in the hardy. And that part was not burnt and not smoke damage, so I could leave that. But over half of the house was burnt from the wood. So that's why we wanted to put the hardy back. You can still buy the wood. The problem is the wood is very expensive to get, and you have to get it made, and it takes months to get it.
And then to confirm, the windows are identical in-kind replacements, as are the doors, yes?
Correct.
And the front door, you have not installed that yet, but you have installed the other 2 doors?
No, I have not got the doors yet. The only thing we have installed is the windows.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have the doors yet. The wood, the front door takes 4 months to get made, and the back doors take 2 months.
Okay, so questions from the commissioners? I don't know why I can't see that.
Well, I think I guess the question for you, Serena, this is a procedural question do the guidelines specify that the hardy plank at 4 inches would be an in-kind replacement for this this double whatever, I forget what you call it now, this double molded, because I'm assuming that has an apparent shadow line of about 3 inches or so. It's very small, because it's there's two shadow lines per board, and it seems from an architectural point of view that the hardy plank is not an in-kind replacement for that. So what do the guidelines say about that?
So the guidelines, I'm pulling up the cement fiberboard language right now because we do have a specific amendment. Okay, so cement fiberboard siding materials. Cement fiberboard is not appropriate as the primary siding material on existing historic buildings. Under certain circumstances, you may permit it. Smooth cement fiberboard on non-historic structures, new construction, new additions to historic buildings. So that's why you saw it on the new construction for the Collards at 3605 23rd Street. They had the fire and they had to do the demolition. So that was new construction. There's cement fiberboard there.
Right. It doesn't sound like the guidelines allow hardy plank.
I mean, unless you were to qualify this because of the fire damages, new construction on this.
Well, what is then that gets into the what is new construction? It's not. This is a repair, I would say, not a new construction.
Yeah, I would say this repair too. I would agree with that.
I let something out of my mouth, and that actually just like rocked the foundations of all historic preservation. So please ignore what I said. Just imagine this.
So, I mean, I at the moment, I don't see how we have any leeway on this. I mean, we can take this to the board and see what the board says, but as far as DRC is concerned, the guidelines seem to me like they're fairly clear that we cannot approve or recommend. First of all, we don't approve anything. We're just a recommendation committee. That we can't recommend something that goes against the guidelines. So we would have to look to HLRB for guidance on this issue.
Is it, with this picture up here, which is the front of the house, it's evident that there's a fair amount of at least smoke damage to the siding under the porch roof, above the porch roof, going up to the gable. That wood looks pretty good. No, I don't see any obvious fire damage there. And I'm wondering if that kind of consideration is to at least keep
It's
that
all
part.
gone. I will pull up new photos. Those were the photos I had when it was submitted. It's all gone.
It's all gone? Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry to hear that.
Sorry. So this is it most recently. So everything has been moved. There's new windows in on.
Okay.
Well, can I ask a question, Serena? Why did the removal of the siding continue after this issue was raised? After it became aware, it became known that this was a historic property.
Honestly, I can't answer that. We Michael spoke to the contractors on site. We spoke to the contractor on the phone. We followed up with emails. So, Mr. Jones,
When they came out, when they came out and said something to us, we were already done. We were like 3/4 of the way done, and the guy's like, "Well, you're already done. Might as well go ahead and finish." I mean, we finished that same day they came out. And the other thing is too is 3/4 of the siding could not be saved. If you look back at the old photos, the back of the house was fully burnt. The back, the left side, like probably 2 or 3 feet up, all the bottom boards were rotten all the way across the bottom. The front under the porch all had to be replaced. To the right side of the front door, all had to be replaced. And then there's more rot on the right side. The front and over by the fireplace was all rotten too. Even some of the plywood underneath we had to replace.
All right. Well, I think we're at the point where this if it isn't going to be replaced in kind with wood siding, the guidelines do not allow for the hardy plank, so this has to go before the board if we're going to continue to contemplate any kind of replacement with anything other than what was there before.
Okay. So let me ask you a question: Is hardy? Because I've been told that people have done hardy in the neighborhood.
Yeah, on additions and new construction, not on the original, not on historic structures.
Oh.
I can send you a link to the design guidelines again, where it states that it's not appropriate for the historic structure on a site.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look into the wood because I've been told it takes like a year to get the wood siding. So that means that we would have to leave the house with Tyvek till we get the siding in. Because nobody makes that siding anymore. You actually have to go to a wood shop and have it pre-manufactured, like each piece made.
Well, I mean, I know I've spoken with the owners before about COAs for this site, so I know they knew it was a local historic district. So unfortunately, it's not our fault that you removed the siding before you had.
But that's what I'm saying. But a lot of the siding I could not save. Over 2/3 of the siding was bad. Not only that, what's there now does not meet code. There's no plywood underneath there for wind resistance. Too. And a lot of the plywood was rotten on the side. All the bottom pieces of plywood had to be replaced.
We do not stand in the way of repairs and replacement in kind, and we would not have stood in the way of a replacement in kind, but you are asking for a change, and now are saying that you're frustrated that it's going to take time to get the replacement material. The fire happened over a year ago. You had all this time to get that replacement material and to work with us for an approval.
Well, see, I didn't start till January because it takes just so you know, if anybody gets a fire, it takes 6 to 9 months to get your insurance company to approve the estimate for you to get started.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we worked with the Collards who really struggled to get through that process. Yeah. So we have a lot of empathy for for it, but it doesn't exempt the owners from having pursued the zoning requirements that the local historic district zoning overlay requires of them. If you would like to have the owners contact us, we've tried to contact them, but they haven't gotten back to us, so we could walk them through this directly.
Yeah, they're very hard to get a hold of. That the lady's a traveling nurse.
So it sounds like this is going to go on the discussion agenda. In the meantime, if you want to send me any additional information, particularly about the front door, that would be helpful. But otherwise, so you have a week to send me any updated information that you would like to. But otherwise, this will be on the discussion agenda. I will post the agenda 1 week in advance with a staff report that outlines our recommendations. And so I will send you that link with the link to the meeting and everything and the agenda so you can come at the correct time next week.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me reshare. So our fourth item is the pergola for the Green Valley Pharmacy. Mr. Maharme, is any representative for the Green Valley Pharmacy on the line? Well, so you've seen this project before. This was a set of drawings that were sent to me after the HLRB meeting started last month. I cannot get confirmation that this is what they want, but this is the last thing they sent to me. I am meeting with them and their entire team on Friday, so maybe I will get some more information out of them. But in the meantime, they had submitted to us last time a flat-topped awning and then realized that actually they wanted a sloped awning. It's still below the coping, as Andy suggested, and it's in front of it.
I think this building has been drastically altered since we approved it years ago. When it was a pharmacy with mansard roof, false mansard roofs. And the character of the building has really changed by this. And, you know, they've kept the roof just below the cornice, if you will, of the top of the building. It's really hard to pull in the corner. To do that with that roof, and you're going to end up with all sorts of alterations to the base of the historic structure, get flashing in and to properly waterproof it. It would be far better. You can attach the pergola to the brick structure, if you will, without any problem. But if you kept the roof so that you had maybe a foot gap, you would not have that problem. And I don't think there's any service that's going to occur out of the doorway there when it's raining, if you're having dining outside. I just don't see that as a reason for that. So I think you could leave a gap of a foot, and
So
you could actually drop the slope of the pagoda, whatever you want to call it.
Is this open, or is this gonna have I didn't see this before. Does this have a roof on it, or is it just open framing?
It will be operable, so the awning itself will be able to come in and out. The pergola is permanent, as are the rafters, but the actual material will come in and out. I think they also hope to have drop downs on the sides.
Where's the awning?
The awning is, if you look at the second page, there's a diagonal slope. The awning will be the diagonal slope. They didn't include pictures this time because they were just kind of picking pictures from the internet.
So it goes over the top of the pergola?
Yes.
So where does it, when it rolls up or whatever, where does it stow? Is it, where does it go?
Don't. Oh, I see there's.
Go back a second. I think you might have had.
I can find out. I think it just bunches at the top, honestly. I don't think it goes in anywhere. It's not like, because it's attached to those rafters and it's pulled up and down by a motorized engine. So it's not like an awning that disappears into like a box on the wall.
Right. So it just bunches up at the top
Yes.
there, which would be yet another reason to endorse Andy's comment of, moving this thing down further from the roof, because otherwise it's just going to bunch up right at the top of the roof there, and obscure the capstone.
So if it were separate and freestanding from the building, it sounds like it would be much more acceptable. But we're touching it, and therefore there was actually not going to be any change to the historic building, and you wouldn't have to worry about any water issues because the water's sitting on top of the bunched awning, whatever, and anything else like that. That sounds more acceptable.
I think it would be a much better idea. I think bringing that up to the building, the building's already drastically altered from its historic appearance when it was designated as a historic site because of a long-term African-American pharmacy there. And to see now, I mean, it's basically been stripped of all its detail. And then you're going to put whatever we're going to quote, pergola or awning or something on it. I think that if it's separate from the building, I really don't have a problem. I do have a problem still with taking that roof close that high up to the top of the historic building. I think you will be able to see that there is a main front there. Again, when it was designated, it had a mansard.
That was a non-historic.
It was not historic, but it was historic to the pharmacy. It was not historic to the original building. The original building was a grocery store. So I just don't know. I think we ought to commend the applicant for furnishing elevations at this point, because we've been asking for these for some time. Yeah. And this is the first time they've actually shown what it's going to look like. So I think that's to be commended, and I think they can make some adjustments to it. Recommendation would be separated with your post out front and then post within a foot of the building and supported completely independent so that we don't have the historic building and drop the slope of that. I think you could drop the slope and still shed water a bit. Or you could even go with a metal roof, if you will. And that might make it easier. I'm not sure we can vote for that. I just really concerned this thing doesn't look anything like what we designated. It's been drastically altered from what the purpose was. It was an historic pharmacy. We designated because of its significance there. It doesn't have any real architectural significance, but undisturbed, that doesn't look like what it legally designated in the law.
Okay.
It has a lot more character. Whether you like the master group or not, at least it was somewhat distinctive as a building you could recognize.
Okay,
Now, it
so-
just looks like an old building from freshly painted. It doesn't look anything like what was the forest.
Okay, so it sounds like everyone agrees that this is once again a discussion
Yeah.
item and that you would like to see those changes. And
Yeah.
okay, I will, I assume that Mr. Moharme or Mr. Elamine, none of them are on the line yet. Okay, and I will follow up with them and get that information from them either in phone or in email or in written. Right. Okay, so the next item is the development of the Elkins building. So Lauren and Sarah, if you would like to take it away, I don't know if you want to share your screen or if you want me to screen it.
I can share, Serena, if that's okay.
I was going to Syracuse.
So I don't have much to say about the project other than the DRC and the HLRB have seen a couple different design options for the Elkins building. And I know Sarah will probably get into it a lot with the presentation, but this is just a reminder that this is in the commercial form-based code. The Elkins building is identified for preserving the historic facade. And we saw them about, I think, 3 times last year. And the last time we saw them was back in December of 2022. And so Sarah's here to kind of explain how the project's been moving along with the design. And I'm happy to help remind you all of some of the key things that were brought up. If Sarah doesn't mention it, but I think she will. What were some of the things that the HLRB's feedback was the last time that they all saw this? So thanks, Sarah, and everybody for being here.
Thanks, Lauren. And I hope everyone can hear and can see my screen. Is that correct? Okay, great. With me tonight, I'm Sarah Mariska. I'm a land use attorney at Odin Feldman Pittleman. And with me is John Regan with Christopher Companies, as well as Angela and Rodney with Devereaux and Associates, the architects on this project. And as Lauren mentioned, we have been to this group several times and gotten some really good feedback that has helped inform and advance our design. I have a few introductory slides just to refresh everyone's memory, since it has been several months since we have been before this group. Just to remind everyone, this site, and let's see if I can advance, is a very small site at the corner of Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. It's less than half an acre, and it's currently occupied with a 2-story building that is on the HRI, and the form-based code calls for facade preservation of this structure. Just a few images to remind everyone what is there today. And then just to refresh everyone's memory that some of the conversation that we have had is that we are balancing a number of design considerations, including the preservation of the facade, transit improvements that the county has prioritized along Columbia Pike for a very busy and well-used bus stop, transit and street modifications along Walter Reed. And then, of course, we are addressing the requirements of the form-based code. Others may jump in with their recollections, but I think the takeaways that we had from prior discussions were the need to keep the facade in the location that it currently is in. We will be taking the building down to preserve and protect that facade, to clean it, to safeguard it. We do need to construct parking underneath, so we want to ensure that nothing happens to the structure during construction, but we do recognize the importance of preserving that facade as it currently sits in its current location and as currently it's formed. We also heard, I think, very compelling comments about making sure that this facade, that the upper stories complement the streamlined modern design of the facade, and then also that the design and color choices do not match the Elliott that is approved to the east on Columbia Pike, but complement that design of that building that's been approved along Columbia Pike. And then finally, we have had some discussion with this group as well as with DES about the need to both accommodate transit stop improvements, but in the context of preserving this facade in its location. And so what you'll see tonight is I wanted to go back to refresh everyone's memory where this design started, what you've seen, and where it is today. And what we have tonight is just to give a little bit more detail, we have advanced this to integrate the bus shelter into the structure. So in this image, you'll see the existing facade does have these different sections, and we have been able to very cleverly, I think Angela and Rodney have done a great job of incorporating this into that structure and keeping that design and also providing the transit stop that DES is looking for in the context of this structure. So to go back, this is where we started in April of 2022. We heard some comments that this perhaps was the upper stories were not consistent with the historic facade. So we came back in May of 2022 with a design that had advanced but was still preliminary. And there were some comments about, I think, the roof line and some of the elements and making sure that the design read perhaps more horizontally and was a better balance to the historic facade. When we returned in December, I think there were some comments that the design was improved in some ways, but again, some discussion about the color selection as well as how the building read in comparison to both the Elliott to the east on Columbia Pike, as well as the historic facade. So today we are here with a design, and this includes the transit stop, which I know is challenging to see in this rendering, but we have advanced the design and are here tonight to hear feedback from this group about the direction that it has taken. So I'm just going to quickly, this information I think was provided in advance. I think this is a helpful rendering, but I am just going to run through quickly. Here is the South Walter Reed elevation. Here is the Columbia Pike that we were seeing. Here is the rear of the building, the north elevation where the access to the parking structure would be. And then this would be the east elevation that's adjacent to the approved Elliott. So it would be very close and would not be particularly visible once the Elliott is constructed. You can also see the courtyard on this facade. And then finally, here is a view on the left from Columbia Pike and the Elliott ghosted in on the right-hand side, as well as kind of the image from looking from Walter Reed toward Columbia Pike there on the right-hand side. The only other thing I think that I wanted to quickly cover that was in the package that was provided is that we did provide some material selection that includes some cast stone, hardy, and I don't know, Angela, if you want to jump in and say anything more about the material selection, but I think tonight we wanted to update you on where the design stands and get this feedback before proceeding to the HLRB. With that, John or Angela, I don't know if you all want to add to my quick summary, because I do want to make sure we get to the discussion.
Sure. I'll add a few thoughts about the materials and things that we were thinking. So for the existing building, just to reiterate what Sarah was saying, it's a cream colored, I wouldn't actually say it's cream, it's more of a sandy colored precast panel, black framed storefront, and a dark precast base that's really black. And then you'll see that metal canopy that runs along horizontally as also the signage plane of the building, and that is in a black metal. There's also a very small cornice across the top of the building at the second level that's also a black metal cornice. And so our goal is to keep as many as the materials as possible on the existing building, as actually is feasible in the reconstruction, and any replacement of materials will make every attempt to make them match the existing, so that there's virtually no distinction between the old and the new. As you can see, this old part of the building really does need some cleaning, and just in a visual tour through the building, some of the precast panels have water damage and probably will need to be replaced. But we've identified a precast color that we think is an excellent match for this and is practically not noticeable at all. All the horizontal banding, a lot of the take back that we got from the elevations was that the DRC wanted to see us accentuate the horizontality of the building. So you'll see these lighter gray bands that take place at the floor levels, and those are of a light, cool gray fiber cement siding. And then you'll see the darker cornice band at the top that is of a dark cool gray. Same family range, but we're going with a light, mid, and dark color. And our thought was, with this dark color, we actually are kind of making the building fade a little bit into the distance. And then the infill panels between the windows are a mid-tone cool gray, again in fiber cement, and we were proposing those to be a smooth plank siding material. You can see also that the third floor, when we set that back over the existing second floor level, we want to be able to capture that space as some private balcony space where people they're not going to be able to do a whole lot out there, but at least they could step out onto that second floor level. And so the parapet of that existing second floor is not quite high enough for the building code. So we were proposing to add a horizontal profile rail on the inside of that parapet, probably about 2 feet tall, just to get us to the point where we're at the correct height for building code. And you can see we picked on the left-hand side is the cast stone that we matched to the existing, as well as the dark cast stone, which is, there's not a whole lot of it on the building. It's under the storefront windows in a few locations. And then you'll see our 3 fiber cement siding colors, a light, mid, and a darker color. And then we were going with the existing canopy. It's a dark metal. So we were going to go with dark metal accents for the handrails and also for the windows. And then one last thing is on the curve between Walter Reed and Columbia Pike. We went with a different window pattern on that curve. Not only we kind of wanted to accentuate the curve a little bit, but also to kind of maybe pick up on the windows along the second level of the existing building, which have a tighter mutton spacing and window spacing. So I just wanted to point out that we did change the windows in that location as kind of an accent. That's it. John, I don't know if you wanted to say anything or.
Hey, John, you're muted if you do want to say something.
I'm so so anxious not to talk over. No, I have nothing to. I mean, the only part that I think you and I talked about was a little bit on the top. Do you want it to be smooth, or do you want that curved on the top? In this picture, you can see the differences between the two.
Right.
Thanks so much for providing us that summary of everything that's going on with the design. We'd like to now have this go to the DRC to provide any kind of feedback. Omari, I was wondering if, and if you all didn't notice, we've lost one of our DRC members. Robert had to jump off. He jumped off during the middle of the presentation. So, but Omari and Andy can provide feedback to the design, and it's definitely changed since we last saw it in December. Can we zoom in on the transit shelter? I'd like us to kind of focus on that a little bit and see how the DRC is feeling. Andy, this is kind of part of your suggestion of trying to see how we can incorporate the existing facade to handle a possible transit shelter, and wanted to see, is there a way that you can zoom in, Sarah, a little bit more?
On the drawing part or on the picture part?
Probably, I mean, a little bit on the picture part, and we might have to shift around a little bit. So, so it looks like with what's being proposed is that we originally had a, you know, that part of it was 2 side-by-side windows and an entrance, and that is now being proposed to be 3 side-by-side. And so are you all proposing to kind of go in a little bit more into the kind of interior space, or is it still the same? Looks like it's still the same
It will be,
profile.
it's currently indented. It's going to be going, we will take up some of the floor space of our building to accommodate the 2 benches. If you look at the drawing to the left bottom, we are, you know, this was to, because we didn't want to move the big discussion was not to move the facade back or even a foot. So we're putting the building back exactly where it is today. But the transportation staff really didn't have enough clear space between the front of our building and the side, you know, the front or the curb pan on Columbia Pike. So by incorporating the benches inside our, you know, underneath of our, basically, or inside of our building, they'll still be outside, but it allows basically the bus shelter to be integrated into our building. And then we still have clear space in front of the building towards the curb pan. That would it's the best of both worlds.
And I've been in on those meetings. Transit has seen this. Have they provided you much feedback or anything? Like, did they say that this meets their mission?
I believe so. Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
our understanding, Lauren, is that this is they thought that this was acceptable, that this works to meet the intent of the transit stop that they were looking for at this location.
Great, thank you. All right, Omari, Andy, any thoughts?
Now, let me jump in. I think, first of all, I'd like to commend the architect and everyone else here. And also, I think the county for not putting a bus shelter in, but taking advantage of the indents of the building at the ground floor level would provide some overhead cover, if you will, in a rainy situation. Or I think this is really a good solution. I like what I see on Columbia Pike, but is there not also a bus stop on Walter Reed?
No.
So that they have abandoned that. Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I take that back. Do you have the picture, Sarah? Do you have a picture of the side?
I do, and what I was going to say, Andy, is that there is a bus stop on Walter Reed, but it's not the they don't have the volume, and also they were not seeking the same type of transit improvements that were selected or requested for Columbia Pike. So there is a bus stop on Walter Reed, but the DES, the county is not looking for the same type of transit shelter at that location. And Lauren may have a better way of saying it, but.
Are they gonna have the high curb, foot high curb, so that the buses can?
From what I understand with the Walter Reed side, that they're going to be, oh, you mean on the Columbia Pike side? I think they said, I'm trying to refresh.
Columbia Pike will have the higher curb, but not Walter Reed. I think that is some of the discussion that we've had, is that we would have to construct the higher curb for the transit platform along Columbia Pike, but not on Walter Reed.
Okay, well, I think that's good. I mean, I think this is, I appreciate the fact that everybody has looked to this particular problem, if you will, and the fact that bus stops seem like we're doing structure that implies motion or whatever. Have a bus stop here seems appropriate, but not the bus shelters that would detract from the building itself. So I think that adds a great deal to this. It's subtle. It doesn't jump out at you. The building's still the same building without a bus shelter blocking the view, if you will. And I think it makes a lot more sense. I think everybody involved here should be congratulated on coming up with a good solution. It's taken a lot of different people to come up with something that works and respects that historic building. Robert, are you up there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. My computer cut out, and anyway, I've figured out how to get back on, so I'm here.
Robert, we just started the conversation about the design, and the first thing that we were focusing on was the bus shelter, the fact that it's now inside the facade. So Andy just provided his comments on it and seemed to be happy with how it's looking. What are your thoughts?
I think that I agree with Andy. This is a fantastic solution. I was very disturbed by the previous iterations, you know, and by incorporating it into the building this way, it does it, you know, it I think it satisfies both the desire to have a place for people to sit and without interfering with the way the building is presented to the streets. I think it's a fantastic solution. I think it's.
I think we just lost Robert a little bit. So let's wait for him to unfreeze. Mari, what are your thoughts?
I would concur with Robert and Andy as well. I think that this is a great solution to the complex problem, sort of dealing with sort of modern transit needs and historic building. I think it's definitely a great sort of design solution for a particular problem. I think it satisfies a lot of different needs essentially here. So I'm definitely in favor of it, and I commend the design team and everybody that's working to get this all right.
Great. Well, I think then, if it's all right, I'd like us to transition away from the bus transit, and now I think it would be good to kind of start focusing on the stories above the historic building and see how we're feeling with this now kind of horizontal approach that they're trying to do, as well as kind of the different, it seems like there's about 3 different materials that are being proposed. And if you all could kind of provide your feedback on that.
Can you hear me?
Hi,
Lauren?
Robert, we can hear you. Yep.
I'm on the phone now.
Thank you.
I don't know what my computer is doing, but and it seems to do this a lot when I'm doing this. Anyway, so I I have my iPad, so I have the drawings, that were posted on the website, so I can follow along from here. So I was making a comment. I think I was pretty much done. That I thought that the bus stop was a fantastic solution and very clever and to be commended, as Andy said. And then I guess you now moved on to the facades?
We just started, and Omari pretty much was in agreement with what your comments were and Andy's comments were. So I think this will be really interesting, that the bus shelter, this is kind of the first approach that we're seeing in Arlington. So I think that's really great. So now we're kind of curious to know how how the DRC feels about the kind of new proposed design for the upper stories.
Okay. Should I go now? I mean,
Please,
I don't know.
just in case we lose you, go for it.
Well, I think this is a big improvement. I think each step has brought it closer. I like that the darker. I usually don't like darker facades like this, but I think that the contrast to the building below is really nice and helps it pop, so that you tend to see the building below. And I like that the balconies are present but not dominating, as they had been in some of the earlier schemes. So I think this is pretty nice. A couple of comments. I feel like it might be of benefit to end the building though on with maybe a thin light cornice, a capstone, kind of like the building below ends with a black contrasting cap. If there was something like a white line or a lighter line across the top, that might help stop the building. Right now, it just seems like it just got cut off. And that maybe that's the color of those horizontal bands, or maybe it's even something that's closer to the historic building. But I think it really does convey the modern sort of experience. But I had another question, which is on the side of the building, on the Walter Reed side, the building cantilevers out a little bit. Is that because there's a driveway that's being accommodated? Is that what I've kind of gleaned from the drawing?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
Because I would, that bothers me a little bit, but I get why you're doing it.
It matches also the Elliott also did that as well.
The what? Oh, okay.
The Elliott also did that same thing.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, those are my comments. I think this is looking really good. I'm curious to hear what the other members have to say. So I will now defer to them.
Again, I think I basically agree with Robert. I think it's really nice. There's two images, by the way. You can see this, Robert. There's two different treatments. Looking at it from the corner across from Walter Reed and probably a Pike. We're looking at the corner on these two shots. And biggest difference I see is really the upper one has a real cornice that overhangs slightly, and the other just basically stops as a straight line. I think the lower sketch is a much more modern approach than the cornice, which is a little bit of Art Deco simplification, if you will, of the cornice, so I appreciate that. I think without the cornice itself and just a thin line, maybe a white line or a gray line, a light gray line at the top to indicate that is the top of the building would be a much more subtle approach and much more like the historic building below. And I think that other than that, I think the windows on the lower one match much better, in my opinion. The windows on the historic structure, the building looks more like it goes, the two buildings go together, if you will, without a major scene. I think it's a really, the addition really does complement the historic structure as opposed to reducing it, even though it's much larger visually. I think the darker gray color overall above, and that nice creamy white or sandy white historic structure really makes the historic structure stand out. But the structure above it, if you will, the new structure, certainly it really complements it without mimicking it directly.
Andy, can I ask a follow up? You were saying you think a light gray line towards like the top, closer towards the coping. Are you saying like the actual top of the building, or where that line is kind of dividing that top part of the building? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, can I clarify that too real quick, or ask the same question, but maybe a little bit different? Or you see the bands in levels 4, 5, 6, the lighter gray colors? Yes. So are you saying put like that color on the like a thin band of that at the very top? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that's it. I think that's a good way of, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
And that's basically, this is Robert, that's basically what I was saying also.
Okay. No, we're trying to figure it out. I was just trying to figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
You know, just so that it looks like the building has a, kind of a termination. So it just it resolves at the top.
Okay.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that I would add, I think a lot has been said about it. I think I pretty much agree with all of it. I think the only thing that I would add is that perhaps, I mean, I do sort of miss the corner window treatment that's present in the December version versus the current one. I kind of like the way that those three corner ones are sort of more bunched together, sort of more directly sort of speaking to the existing building. So I mean, that's my only sort of comment. I mean, design-wise, I think that those are corner three windows, and I kind of miss those. But I mean, otherwise, I would seriously concur with Andy and Robert's comments about the building sort of being being present and but not overwhelming, but also having a very nice modern look, sort of enhancing the look of the existing Elkins building.
So wait, to clarify your statement, you like in this same drawing, the one is up, you like the wider windows in the upper left-hand side versus the current proposal. If we used those windows in in the curvature,
yes,
would be
that's
better.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's my only design comment, really. I mean, Otherwise, I think, that's only.
What's the other two's comment regarding that comment? Just want to make sure that I've got 3 for 3, not 1 for 3.
Well, this is, let me jump in. This is Robert. Since I can't see what Amari was referring to, I mean, I'm okay with the way the windows are now in the current, the current proposal. But,
we're in the last, what page is that, Sarah? Because he's on his iPad.
I know, but Robert's looking at the submission. I did the submission that Robert's looking at doesn't include the December image, John. So he's not able to see that.
You're killing me.
I know. Nothing's easy.
Well,
maybe Robert's computer.
The December, so at the curve section in the December submission, Robert, it had 3 side-by-side windows right at the curve part. And right now what we're seeing is 3 windows that have a little bit of spacing in between. And so
I see. Eliminate those. Amari's saying eliminate those center kind of precast pieces in between.
Right.
And then
Yes.
put them together.
Yeah,
right?
I could support that, I guess. Yeah. I think that's a good comment.
Omari, are you comfortable with the fenestration pattern that they're proposing on the curve section, where it looks like it's kind of the more square, equally sized square?
Yeah.
I don't know. Or do you want it to go back to the more like center pane and then 2 smaller ones, one on top, one on the bottom? With
I think the sort of the more equal square one is okay. I mean, I think it's more sort of that bunching at the corner that I like previously, and it'd be nice to see it again here. But I think that's the actual square pattern. I think it's probably going to be okay with that either way. Yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Andy?
I like the lower right-hand elevation much better. I think the way the glass is treated and the way the vans are treated, it turns the corner more smoothly, if you will, which respects the way the historic structure turns the corner. I think the architect and everybody here involved should be congratulated. I think you've done a fantastic job. It's really looks much better than it did originally, and I think it had some good points originally. But I think you've really come up with something that really, I think it's to be commended. I think this is a real nice design.
That's great. And you get gold stars from Andy. That's great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Maybe at least 4.5 or 5 stars.
Okay. All
I
right.
think it's really good.
Can I ask some feedback though? I want to ask about the 2-foot grate, I think, or kind of grate parapet that you're putting up on top of the historic aspect of it. So that is that like a black bar kind of material?
It's a black horizontal rail.
Okay, thanks. I totally blanked out on my architectural terms.
And is that to accommodate, is there essentially a balcony that is continuous?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
it allows people on that 3rd floor to walk out onto the rooftop of the 2nd floor.
Okay.
I'm always back and forth on, do we want to see, this is something that's necessary for fire code. They're going to have something up. So it's either, it could be a solid material or it could be this type of horizontal rail. Or I always kind of go back and forth with the idea of there being maybe a tempered glass, which is very modern looking. But what are your thoughts on this, DRC members?
I think what they've got is the way to go.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree too.
Great. Okay.
Great.
And any concerns about the kind of, you said that the lighter gray material, is that, you said that's like a siding?
The light gray bands and the dark gray bands, all of the horizontal banding is a fiber cement panel.
Okay.
And then the infill in between the windows is a fiber cement siding.
Okay.
Smooth, narrow plank.
Great. Any other comments that the DRC members have?
No, I think it's I think this has come a long way, and I think it's one of the better additions to historic facades that we've seen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
I'd like to jump in again. I think this is actually one of the best looking, potentially one of the best looking buildings on Columbia Pike. I really think this is a really great job. Really
Wow.
think
But it's only 4.5 stars, according to Andy.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. You barely going to get reservations
I
for
mean,
the dinner. I can't believe it.
it's real close to 5.
Really close to that.
4.8 maybe? Like,
No, I think that's fantastic.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy. I'd like to just provide, so I think you all have received some really good constructive feedback from the DRC members. You all, but I'm assuming that the DRC, how would you like to go forward on this? Because it seems like the only tweaks that we are suggesting is that curved window section, as well as trying to kind of create a lighter gray band towards the coping. If you all feel that you can make those adjustments before in like the next week, you could present that to the HLRB and have them weigh in on it. Or DRC members, if you want to be, bold, you can also say that this could go on consent agenda. It's kind of up to you on the next direction you'd like to take it.
Well, Lauren, I think that the full board is going to want to see this. I don't think it's really a consent thing.
Okay.
But I would say that if they can make those changes, they should definitely do them, so that they can come this month. Yeah. And be on the discussion agenda.
So
I
just
think
to
the full
confirm,
board
Lauren,
will really want to see this.
we would need to give this
Angela,
to you a week from today, Lauren, to go to the July HLRB meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what I understand, Serena. Do I have it? I always question myself.
No, that is correct, for submission to the HLRB for review ahead of the meeting, and also so we can write staff reports which are accurately reflect what the plans would be.
Okay. Angela, are you going to be suicidal or can you make it happen?
We'll make anything happen, John, for you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just kind of mention, I'd like us to have just a follow-up discussion about how you will be approaching the historic facade and taking it down, and then the idea, because I recognize there are some panels that are not in the best of shape, and we can come up with some kind of guidelines for you on what the county would like to see in that approach. So, but that's something that we can have a sidebar conversation. So that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much it, unless the DRC has any other things they'd like to point out, or Serena, if I missed anything. Okay, great.
Yeah. Well,
Sarah,
thank
just
you.
let me know if you have any questions or if you need any clarification on what was provided tonight.
The only question, I saw Rodney at one point. Rodney, I think you had a question. I want to make sure our team had all the questions we had answered. I don't know, Rodney, if you needed to ask anything.
No, I think it was answered. I was just going to speak to the banding and how the design system was working with lighter, darker gray, and there was a reasoning why those colors were there. But if we're fine, just doing a lighter band at the top, we can find a color that's still part of the monochromatic color scheme that works with the top. That's all I was going to speak to. I'm fine.
Okay, great. No, that's all I had, Lauren. I want to make sure all of our questions got addressed. But anyone else, John or Angela?
I'm good.
No, I don't have anything.
Great. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. This has been really helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who from your team will be presenting?
Across the corner.
You will, and do you need the presentation, or would you like to present your own screen?
No, I don't have a screen.
Oh.
Can I use yours?
Yeah.
Please, please, thank you.
And you are all welcome to sit at the table if you would like.
This should be your
Some
presentation.
of the cookies and whatever is sweeter twice these every time.
So this next item is the Reevesland the Reevesland project, and I recognize many of those who are in the room, some who I talk to almost every day. Cleve and Scott, thank you for being here. I appreciate you jumping, being able to get here when you did. I understand with some of your team members had not being able to be here tonight. Mike, if you want to go right into any introductions or anything you want to stay to before Scott goes into the design.
No, I think we could dive right into it. I think everyone on the call right now is a veteran of these conversations, and definitely of the last 6 months or so, and some of you for many, many more years than that. So again, if there's anyone on the call that is new, my name is Mike Spots. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Habitat DC Nova. We're partnering with HomeAid of the National Capital Region and L'Arche of Greater Washington, DC to preserve the Reeves farmhouse for an intended use of as a group home for adults with intellectual disabilities and their caregivers, owned and operated by L'Arche when the project is complete. This is going to, just one of the things I like to emphasize every time we have these conversations is that we want to keep the mission in mind for this. Historic preservation is a mission as part of this project and a very important and critical mission as part of this, but we also are working to create a housing resource, a permanent housing opportunity for critically underserved populations. So without further ado, I will pass it off to Scott, who has been spearheading this process for longer than I've been involved with from the architecture side of things. So thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks, Mike. Am I correct in saying that's just Omari, Andy, and Robert? There's no other DRC members on virtually?
No, Rebecca was not able to.
Oh, okay. All right. Just want to make sure. So you guys have seen this a number of times. So I'm gonna dispense with the background and just kind of get into the new stuff, if that's okay. Are there any questions? I don't know, Serena, if you have some of the old stuff, if a question comes up to bring up. But otherwise, we'll just dive in. So I'm always reminded how the projector doesn't work as well as the screen. So yeah, just, the pipe stem lot, existing house, the addition, nothing is really different. We're going to talk about site work. So, we have the new three-dimensional. We did this rendering really actually it helps us understand, helps everybody understand it better, a bit more photorealistic rendering to give a better understanding of all the pieces and parts, but also for L'Arche, and they are working on some fundraising efforts, so this is very helpful for them. So this, I know you can't read any of that. I can't read it either. Hopefully you had a chance to kind of track through it, the submission earlier on. Sure. But just in a nutshell, I'll just reiterate what we already talked about on the historic farmhouse. The plan, and this is represented in the notes. The plan is to remove the existing aluminum siding, inspect what we have underneath, repair and repaint what is there, assuming there's enough. There isn't a substantial amount of rot and damage. Plan is to work through a restoration of that existing wood siding underneath in kind. The addition at the ground level is all new modern materials. It's fiber cement siding and the AZEK corner boards and the AZEK even all asphalt shingles above. The two things that we wanted to talk specifically about that we kind of were tasked with doing a little bit more homework and wanted to talk in more detail in this iteration are the windows in the historic structure. Last time, if you remember at the full board, we talked about wanting to use aluminum clad wood. There was a discussion about in-kind real wood windows, painted wood windows in the historic structure. That's what we're representing here. Kind of took that discussion to heart, and so we're proposing that. However, I will say that what we had previously in the addition was also aluminum clad wood, and in order to kind of compensate for the more expensive real wood windows in the historic structure, we're proposing going to a vinyl window in the addition to help balance out the budget. I know there was a question that was raised either by, I think Serena probably raised it, about sort of the paint finish on the vinyl window or the sheen of that compared to a matte painted. Unless we paint the vinyl windows, we're really kind of stuck with a vinyl window appearance. So that does have a little bit more of a shiny sheen than a matte paint. I don't think it makes sense to try and apply another coat of paint onto the manufactured vinyl window. So that's a little bit of a distinction. Just wanted to point out that that's sort of the research that we came back with. And part of that is, again, with the budget, you can get other finishes on vinyl windows, but they end up being expensive. So the point of using vinyl windows is to help balance the budget. So using sort of a standard white vinyl window are intended on the addition. The other thing we talked about on the historic structure last time, which I'm noticing in our notes needs a little bit of a edit in our language, because what's written here isn't exactly what we want to do. What's written is proposing just painted wood up at the eave. And what we talked about last time and what we would like to do, and we'll edit this for our resubmission next week, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, is up at the historic eave, all up here, not really at the porch, because that's very close to the pedestrian, it's very close at hand. But all this eave material, the rake board, the eave board, the soffit, since we are replacing all the roofing with new asphalt shingles, we're replacing the gutters and downspouts with a 5-inch half round, and that comes straight out of the Milner report recommendation. Is given that it's all much higher up on the building and out of reach, the appearance will be really the same as if it were wood. We did note, and we talked last time, we had. It was probably not at the board meeting, but we had a subsequent conversation with staff. We didn't realize there was a refreshed Milner report. We had the original report, that updated report from 2011, thank you. That actually indicated that the reinspection of the eave, much of the eaves of the historic structure, there was a lot of deterioration between the original report. So we also think that proposal, that approach, kind of bears out in what we think the existing condition is, that there's a lot more deterioration up at the eaves than there was in the original. So what we'd like to do is replace that all with synthetic material, AZEK, that it has the longevity. It'll just last much longer. The visual appearance will really be no different because it is a smooth. I wanted to note this as well. This is our added, to refresh your memory, this is our added dormer for the stair on the interior. We know you guys are okay with its form and its shape and all that. We'd also like to propose that all of this be synthetic. Again, because it's so high up, it's a new element, and B, it's so high up, out of reach and visually distant, you won't really notice a difference. So not only just sort of the eave trim here that goes around it, but also to use vinyl windows there, if you'll allow, and to use synthetic. I don't think there's really any siding up there per se, because it's really just trim. There's not enough surface area to do siding up there. It's all just trim. So it would be not unlike, the material here at the Eve and the Reagan. So that's what we'd like to propose for discussion, of course. Those are the highlights, kind of circling back to what we talked about before, but I tried to describe the glee that Cynthia had when she saw this the first time, the rendering. It's coming to life.
I'm
So
still
anyways.
excited seeing it now.
Oh, okay, good. I didn't know you were
on.
on. I
I'm
was
here.
expressing
I still have
glee
all the feels.
yeah, I was expressing your glee. So just a little more detail to go with this. So, and I don't want to necessarily go through every piece and part of this unless you'd like me to, but this is down at the porch. This is a detail up, really intended to be up in here. I think we're going to, again, fix the language of this to indicate the synthetic material saying what it meant. It was meant to say synthetic. We'll fix that. But this is down the porch railing. The posts that exist will be restored and repainted. This is the new railing that we've talked about between the posts, and it's just really simple stock railings, not turned balusters, just square balusters, very simple and clean. The
use of wood or vinyl?
That we're planning to all just be wood, to be painted. Yeah.
Because it's always a question. Smooth lumber has been around for 100 and some odd years. Yeah. And we're downtown Alexandria originally. They still have, brush your fingers, a lot of the original molding stuff.
Yeah.
Handrails and balusters, rail, bottom rails, and so forth. So you can really get that. And relatively speaking, it's actually probably cheaper than Home Depot.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the smooth profile book is still on my shelf.
For sure.
Habitat's offices are in the industrial park where smooth lumber is located.
Okay, good.
We can swing by and take a look. I don't know if it's in the showroom or not.
And I apologize, these are very hard to see in the projected as opposed to being this, the siding, and I think in the example we have, we're showing a wood grain siding. We'll fix that to be a smooth.
Good.
Understanding the conversation before, I prefer smooth myself anyway, so that's a win. And then the asphalt shingles. I appreciate the discussion about the church earlier. We talked last time on this too, that the Milne report indicates it was mostly a wood shake roof. That's why we sort of went in this direction with the sort of the brown, but dimensional I think makes sense there from given the earlier conversation about dimensional shingles, because wood shakes did have more texture and dimension to them than other types of simple asphalt roof. The windows, we have some cut sheets, and they are real wood windows. They have a fairly narrow profile. They're quote unquote traditional. That's a branding thing from the manufacturer, but take that with a grain of salt as branding. But they are fairly thin profiles that would be, I think, more historic to the original. And then again, this is just going through all. These are the same facade you saw before. It's just massive notations to make sure we are identifying all where the pieces and parts are and what they are in greater. But we haven't changed the facade of the fenestration.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah, of course.
And this is really a key factor. Ground floor, first floor, if you It's very close to the grade. And virtually no earth.
Yeah.
4 to 6 inches below the joist in the original house. And I think the county was originally concerned if this had gone to a private sale as a residence, there wouldn't be enough room to put forced air, ductwork, and so forth in under that floor. So I guess the question is, what is your intention to do there?
Yes, we're going to replace a lot of that is our intention, that very reason. A lot of it is, some of it's right on dirt, some of it has, a little bit of a gap between the bottom of the joist and earth. There's a lot of deterioration that's visible. We've had the structural engineer has been out and done a detailed walk. There hasn't been, really, other than what had been done previously, there hasn't, unless Mike knows otherwise, there hasn't been any new sort of selective demolition, investigative demolition for the structure. What the structural engineer has been able to see from the cellar looking into those crawl spaces has led us in a direction to really replace a lot of that because there is a lot of damage. And particularly in, plans here. This is the only sort of full cellar zone. This is all crawl space. This is crawl space. This is crawl space. And then there's a little concrete slab over here. And then this, you're seeing the addition dashed in here, but the original, oops, sorry. This is the extent of the original house. This is the porch, the sort of the indent porch. And then this is the original, this rectangle is the original Tory Senate house. This is really the worst condition, as you might imagine, because A, because that's the oldest, but B, because they just kind of moved it in and plopped it down. There really isn't a foundation.
It's literally wood on grade.
Yeah.
It's beam on grade.
So
it was dragged up the hill
Yeah.
down, and they never figured out how much they should have excavated before they dropped it in.
if they used the dairy cows.
Well, I cut some of the holes in the floor, I confess, and you can see the earth dug up by the joist.
Oh,
You
right,
can see all
right.
the floor marks, the drag marks of that. Until I showed people that, nobody would believe me that that had been drunk from uphill.
Well, in that area in particular, our intent is to kind of shore up the house and remove the joist and pour a new slab on it. Because that is so.
What are you going to do? You can replace the joist, or
We're going to remove the joists, and we're still kind of figuring out the logistics with the contractor about how to achieve it from a constructability standpoint. We're still negotiating, not negotiating is not the right word, but trying to work through that with them in terms of sequencing and how. But to be able to shore that structure, cut out the joists. So when we look at the Milner report, as you know, there are some details about how the joists intersect the sill plate and all that. And assuming that those are all correct, which we do, the balloon frame exterior framing comes down and sits on the sill plate. The joist comes in as notched over the sill plate. So it's not platform framed in that the joist sits and then the wall sits on top of that. So we think we can leave the wall in place and cut out the joists. And then basically just pour a slab, the new floor,
okay,
within the footprint.
But then you would, from an appearance standpoint, you put some sort of wood floor over the top of the slab. What
The interior, that would be the same interior floor finish as everywhere. It's probably going to be some kind of luxury vinyl tile or plank vinyl flooring. You know, this user group is a really durable flooring.
Architect, I'm going to interject. I love this discussion, but I want us to move and keep going because I want to make sure that you have time to present everything.
Sorry about the weeds.
That's okay. It's okay.
I didn't have a lot more to present because those were really the primary issues that we talked about and coming back. There is more information that's more detailed in terms of our notations and identifying materials more explicitly. The design of the exterior, I say, hasn't changed. We're just providing more information is really the crux. So with that, I'm happy to say I'm done.
Well, can you clarify about our favorite windows?
Every window's my favorite.
I know the 6/6. Can you just quickly remind us what's happening with those?
Yeah, those are these two here, which are in that same Torsen tenant house on the east facade above the old closed-in porch. We're replacing them in kind, just like the others, as divided lights, wood windows. We had talked about, and thank you for reminding me, we had talked about what we would prefer to do, if acceptable to the committee and the board, is to replace them in kind with wood windows like all the rest, but not do the lights. Because, you know, a true divided light wood window is yet another beast compared to a wood window, because they're not as energy efficient, because you can't do simulated divided lights like you can in aluminum clad divided lights, really.
Okay.
So that would be our preference. I don't think it's represented here, but I'm happy to talk you into it if we can.
Okay, so we are doing a in-kind wood window replacement for those, but let's get clarification how the DRC feels if they should stay 6/6 or if they should go to 1/1. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If that seems to be all your highlights, then I think DRC members, let's talk. Let's get into it. How are you all feeling about the proposal with the kind of synthetic materials that is being done around the roof? As staff, we feel that it's appropriate to allow so that it is durable and it's less maintenance. It just seems to be appropriate. Do you all have any concerns on that?
This is Robert. I'm going to jump in. I don't specifically have, because I think we've done this before in areas that are, you know, damp areas that it's a part of the Maywood guidelines. And it's also the elements are high and you know, if they're painted, I don't think you'll be able to tell the difference from the wood. So I don't specifically have a problem with that. But I've reached the end of my back is killing me. I'm gonna have to peel out of here. But I want to say that it looks really good. I think the perspective looks really nice. I think the project looks really good, and I'm going to leave it to the other DRC members because I'm going to bow out at this point. So thank you for all your hard work on this, because I think it looks really good. It's going to be a great project.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna say goodbye right now.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Robert.
All right, Omari, Andy, it's your show.
I think echoing what Robert said, I think this is different. This proposal is different than previous things we've looked at or previous ideas we've had about this place. Primarily in terms of public view, general public, nobody's going to not even usual, say, street facade. Most of the visibility of the house is from the 4 mile run.
Right.
Down at the bottom. And I think that all of the things that are being proposed are not really certainly seen. I must admit that you wouldn't even be able to tell probably that the wood was grained if you used a grain simulated wood, which I never have seen painted wood with grain visible. But anyway, I prefer the smooth as well. I think the windows in question, the 606, whatever, that's on really the side elevation. And it's not something that's going to be a principal thing that anybody in the general public is going to see. They're going to be on a 4 mile run. The neighbors, kind of like horseshoe that surrounds this site, you'll be able to see them from their backyards, if you will, back of their homes, basically kind of look on this house. I think you've done a really good job on this, and I think it looks good. And I didn't quite go for that ramp, which I think it looks. If you put the handrails on the porch,
And
it all works together.
Yeah, no, I
It
agree.
seems to look fine, and I think I'm not sure that if you get any snow, top of the hill is really almost at the porch. There might be some people that might want to sled down from there. And it is actually a very popular spot. We haven't had any snow.
We may never again.
Climate change may change the whole thing. But I think, well, I think the addition, I don't think you're going to. I had some reservations about the pop out on the original roof, pop up, but I don't think that's going to be that highly visible, especially as a kind of a shed dormer instead of a gable front. That's a much better look. And hoping the shrubbery or the parking area grows a bit.
That's all that's hypothetical.
Yeah,
Those are renderings for fun.
Okay.
That's not part of the landscape proposal. Sorry.
Yeah, that is not.
I should have mentioned that.
That is not our landscaping proposal, which is still under development.
Well, it's still under development. Well, I think it's probably some sort of bushes or shrubbery. Put it a better approach than fence. Maybe pick a fence.
That's actually been an issue that's come up continuously, and we talked with Larsh that unless there becomes some compelling reason further down the line and it's subject to the historic easement, etc., they have no intent of fencing anything. They wanted to keep the sort of existing spirit. Obviously, there's going to be it is going to be a private residence, and so there's not going to be as much access right up onto the porch anytime anyone wants, but they are sort of want to be neighborly and welcoming, and they have talked about not fencing in anything unless there's some unforeseen compelling reason down the line. They wanted to keep emphasizing the current openness, and because they want to encourage neighbors to come by and talk and get to know the core members. they actively encourage.
Might have some lemonade sales. Porch.
Everyone loves a good lemonade.
Appreciate it. I think that's, I think, I think the way you talked about this, I think it really will fit into the community, and it'll probably fit in a lot better than in an actual single-family residence.
All right.
I like it.
And Andy, I'm curious to know what Omari's thinking.
Yeah, I don't have a ton more to add. I think all the sort of things that they've done sort of keep the cost sort of lower, or sort of make sense with materials that aren't quite expensive. I think they all make sense. I think that the vinyl windows on addition makes sense too, because it isn't an addition. It is new. I think that's sort of trade-off. I think there's wood windows on the actual historical building. I think that's a fair trade-off. I think that the board will be excited about that actually.
Okay, good.
I think that any sort of and again, any sort of like any sort of synthetic, quote unquote, material at the eaves, essentially, that also makes sense. I mean, like Andy said, I mean, the major views of this will be from either the sort of park below, or from the trail, or from a little bit further off. I think that won't detract at all from nature of the pavilion. Yeah, I think that, and again, I'd echo what Andy and think well, like the overall project makes a lot of sense. I think it really fits in with the sort of spirit of, I guess the client and also the neighbor as well. The neighbors should be happy.
Appreciate that. How about the 6/6 versus 1/1? Are you guys okay with 1/1 in kind?
I'm quite frankly comfortable with it. I think you can probably get a vinyl window in the 6/6. I think it's really, it is a side elevation. It's really not, it's certainly not visible. 4-mile run pathway hill. So, I mean, I really think you've respected what we often ask for people in Maywood or whatever, which is facade, the street facade. Sure. Is really the most concerned about. I think you've taken care of that primary issue very well.
Okay. So I heard Andy say that you're comfortable with the 6/6 turning into a 1/1. And Omari, did I hear that right, Andy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Omari, are you in the same boat, or are you thinking elsewhere, something else?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that as well. I think that,
okay.
On the whole, I mean, it might mean it would be more correct, probably be 6/6. But I think we're given the whole sort of composition of things. I think it makes sense.
Okay.
And the 1/1, it'll be wood.
Yeah, that'll be wood. Okay. That'll be wood like the rest of the structure. 1/1.
Okay, and so thinking of all the things that Scott you mentioned, so so we're getting 1/1 wood replacement windows on the historic house. We're going to have the 6/6 turned into 1/1s. Those are going to be wood as well. That the windows in the dormer, those are going to be vinyl, and that the windows on the addition are going to be vinyl. That's to kind of counterbalance the cost of the wood window replacement. And you're going to make those changes on the plans to say that it's like the roofing material is going to be synthetic. And you're also going to make an update to the addition siding is not going to have the wood grain, that it's going to be a smooth finish.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds, and based on what I've been typing up in my notes, Omari and Andy, you're comfortable with all of those kind of detailed changes, correct?
There's one other question.
Okay.
Have you considered whether little roof on the porch might be Agreed.
Gail, if you remember, I don't remember if we had any information on front porch roof material. I know we have it on the rear porch and on that one dormer that you can just barely see at that edge there. I don't remember if the Milner report indicated that has metal roof or not.
I don't
South and
think
East
so.
porch was metal roofing, but it was removed
That's
between 2004 and 2005.
but that's the one on the back.
Right.
Does it say anything about the front main porch?
I think it only indicated that one was metal.
Short answer is no, we hadn't thought.
Well,
We-
the only reason I say that is if you're trying to cut down maintenance and whatever.
Well,
you'd be
yeah.
a lot more waterproof. That's such a low slope on that. That's,
Yeah, we can get that
asphalt
some thought.
shingles or whatever, architectural shingles are anywhere near as waterproof as.
And given that, you're right, I mean, it is a relatively low pitch. It may have to be a flat seam metal, not a.
Andy, did you just propose a different material for the roof of the porch?
I said it might be appropriate just because it's a lot more waterproof metal roof, and that's such a low slope on that roof. It's not going to shed water anywhere near as well. And that would be fairly typical and could have been an upgrade. The last go around, they used the cheapest alternative.
Well, let's look into what, Lauren, we'll look into what's available at that low pitch in a pre-finished metal. I mean, budget can't really accommodate copper or turn-coated metal. Real historic metal roofs. I don't think our budget could accommodate that, but we can look into pre-finished and see if there's a flat seam available in a pre-finished that's the budget. I mean, aesthetically, I don't think there's an issue with that as long as we meet the dollar figures.
I was just saying, I think like good long-term investment.
And that is a major consideration. We appreciate anything that lightens, obviously, we're looking at this from a budgetary perspective, both near-term and long-term perspective. Larsh is going to have to maintain it in the long run, and we are building in a very sustainable budget for long-term with reserves and the like. But as any of you who are familiar with funding for social services for people with special needs, it's not exactly the most robustly funded program in the world. So, if we can build more durably up front to provide more sustainability in the long run, those are the types of cost related, and we view that can be, obviously there's a limit to what we can do. The budget, there are kind of maximums, but we're, within reason, we can make some trade-offs in the upfront budget if it improves the operating.
I think if anything, Scott, if you all wouldn't mind taking a look at the Milner report just to see if we don't have details on that, we might be able to find if there's any information possibly in the Sanborn maps concerning the roofing material. But if you all haven't noticed, sometimes with figuring out how everybody can kind of work on this project, if we're going to put a little bit more detail on something else, that might mean that some cost savings need to happen to another element. So I just kind of want to keep that in mind. And right now we have the roof material is an asphalt shingle material. So I understand why they're just proposing that. So I think we can have a sidebar discussion with it and let the HLRB know what ultimately kind of was what we were able to see in our research and what could be proposed, because that's my only concern. I don't want to miss out on something where, like, for example, they're putting a lot of cost into getting the wood in kind replacement windows. I don't want to see there be something else. So start to kind of go into a different material, but we can talk a little bit about that. I should have said this in the beginning. If you all didn't realize, this is coming to the HLRB, hopefully this month, if you guys feel it's ready to go to the next step, because Habitat is looking to get its final certificate of appropriateness for this project. And they need that in order to go to the next steps to have this heard before the county board, based on the letter of intent and kind of like the agreement that Habitat has with the county on what are some of the parameters that they have to get through to basically get conveyed the property. So that's why you're seeing these details are leading up to that final COA. So some of the things that is not being shown, we kind of hinted a little bit about the landscaping, but some of that is going to be figured out leading to many of the permits that Habitat's going to have to get for this. They're going to have a finalized landscaping plan, and those are things that our urban design team, urban forestry, as well as myself will be a part of that review. And there are a couple of other things that are happening on the site, but they're happening outside of the local historic district boundary. So that doesn't mean that means they can do whatever the heck they want. It just means that they don't necessarily need to come to the HLRB to get approval for those items, but those will be a part of their larger package going through the use permit amendment process for this. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. If you all were wondering, well, what's happening around the site, there are other things that are happening, but they're not within the local historic district boundary. But they will be looked at by staff to make sure that it's compatible and follows county county zoning and whatnot. So have we provided, is there anything that you all have questions on that maybe hasn't been addressed? Scott, Mike?
No, Lauren, thank you. I think those were the issues, and you reminded me of the 6/6. We got that, so I think I have all my questions. I don't know, Mike, if you have any additional.
No, not at this time. I think we are all set, and obviously those are the big picture items that we were addressing in advance, and we were looking forward to being back here in a couple weeks to hopefully get the final, if it's deemed worthy, to get final approval, final COA later this month.
So I think the only thing we'll just need is for you all to make the updates to your plans so that we can have that by next Wednesday, so that it can be submitted for the HLRB to review. And then I think when you're making the changes maybe to your renderings about the 6/6, if you want to change that to 1/1, I think that's fine, so they can see what it looks like. Okay. But make a point that is being. But if you could keep the rendering that you have, so that we can kind of show this is what was discussed, and so the HLRB can weigh in on the 6/6 if they should be changed to a 1/1.
Yep, can do.
Okay, great. Okay. I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me participate.
Great.
More.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. Scott? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you,
Looks
sir.
good.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
So our last item, this was regarding the waiting for us. Thank you for your patience. So she would like to install an electric vehicle charger on her home. It is the Charge Point home charger. It would be installed on the driveway side, close to the electrical box there is right now. So let me zoom into the charger. And that is the charge point. that complex that they're looking for. Photograph. So that is the electrical box, and that is the size that they would like to use. Ms. Ruber, is there any additional information you'd like to add?
I'm sorry, Serena?
Oh, just, is there anything else you'd like to add other than location, the kind of charger?
Well, I wasn't sure, Serena, if, and thank you all for hanging in here too. I appreciate you squeezing me into the agenda. I wasn't sure if you shared, because I'm not sure what your slides look like there. The pictures that I was able to send yesterday that where I sort of boxed in with blue tape, like where it would be on the side of the house.
Sorry, I didn't realize that we weren't sharing. Sometimes it's hard to, share, because we just have to unshare. Here we are. So yes, we were sharing your images. So this is,
okay.
Yes, the whole time I was presenting your images and telling you about them, and you could not see them because they were just only on our screen. Apologies. Yes, just to go through them again, this is the location you sent me, and this is a photo the other direction next to the electrical box. This is image of the electrical box, and then here are the specs for the charger, which are much smaller images, so they, I can zoom back in again. So that's the ChargePoint HomePlex. This is information, the sketch from the contractor, and again, the location. So we go back down to that location.
I sent in the picture of the, because I think Serena, our contractor, Chris Dewar, who's our electrician, who's also a fellow Maywood resident, I understood from him that you were thinking, oh, well, maybe we could put it behind the fence. And so I wasn't sure if you knew like what was behind the fence. And that's all of our AC equipment and like the trash cans and stuff on that. They're not on the wall, but we like measured it and everything, and that whole side behind the fence is the new addition, and underneath that is just crawl space. So I don't even know like how we would, first of all, I don't think it meets code because we have to, he said we have to have it a certain amount of feet away from existing equipment, and then there's no space like underneath for him to bring the conduit up. So I don't know how that would work exactly. And also we measured just to like, okay, well, let's say somehow we could figure out if this would work. So we took the measuring tape and we went all the way down. But from where, first of all, he doesn't think he could do it because of code, first of all, but we still measured and we can't find a cable that's long enough. So, you know, I just thought it would be okay and appropriate to still, even though it doesn't look like we can technically put it behind the fence in a workable way, that we could do it, you know, on the side, just where all the other electrical stuff is anyway.
Right, so at this point, you'd be running conduit from the box to the charger and then back basically to where the box is, because that's where the car's
Not, well, I think the conduit is gonna, like that electrical panel right there, the conduit goes inside the house into the basement at that point. So he's gonna run the conduit from the interior up just straight into the box. So there'll be very little, if any, external conduit shown or at all.
Great. Any questions from the commissioners?
I think it looks like a good location.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess a couple of questions. I mean, would it be possible to put it closer to the box itself, or is it that hampered by the gas meter, or if we were sort of slide down towards the box, would that be possible?
I think I could ask if he could do that, but I think the issue was like he had to be a certain amount of space away from the existing equipment.
Yeah.
But wise, it's not any deeper than the panel. And the panel is gonna have to move actually closer to, because it's gonna, so the way he was explaining it, so that's the old, because this is part of a electrical panel upgrade too. And so that panel that's there, it actually will be closer to where we would like to put the charger, because like the old panel has to stay there. And then he puts like the new panel in to the right of it. And I think it's maybe a little bit bigger. Then Dominion comes in and they say the cable goes on the top, like anything like top up is Dominion and like conduit down is like homeowner. And so I think he puts a new panel in, it's gonna be more to the right, and then Dominion has to come in and they like take off the old one. I think that's how, and they attach the new conduit to, he was explaining to me like they have to daisy chain it for a while, so I don't know, but like, so I think it will actually be a little bit closer, and depth wise, I think they're about the same depth. So like, you know, they'll look like this, right? Like the panel and then the charger like that, because they're about the same depth.
Okay. Okay, that's actually, I think that actually somewhat kind of helps. As far as I see it, I think given that, and maybe sort of given maybe some difficulties to put in the back, I think it probably makes sense to have it there anyway. I mean, I think given that the box will be there anyway, I think it makes sense to keep the charger there as well.
Also, the car would be charged on the side of the house as opposed to sticking out in the front.
Yeah.
And the electrical box is going to get moved further away from the facade.
Yeah.
In as part of the.
Part of the effort.
Which I think is a little too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so we currently have nothing on our consent agenda.
Let's put it on the consent agenda.
I think we should put a consent. I agree. Let's put it on consent.
All right. Lovely.
Took us a while to get there, but we got there.
Yes. Okay, I was feeling very
One
lonely.
of the consent, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Okay, so I am going to put this item on the consent agenda, and I will contact you about what that means. So it doesn't sound like we need any additional documentation, so that this can go forward as is, and I will let you know 1 week in advance. The consent agenda is heard first, so it should happen around 6:35 at the meeting on July 19, and then you'll know if it's been approved. The commissioners can pull it at any time, as can any of your neighbors can pull it by submitting a question or saying, hey, I'm concerned about this. But I'll let you know in advance if that happens, and it rarely does, honestly. But otherwise, you should get your an update about the decision on July 19th.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you all for your input.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Mm-hmm.